Good morning. This is Pastor Jason of Kona Faith Center with a word for today. And the word for today is fear, as in the fear of the Lord. In 2 Corinthians 11, the New King James Version says, knowing therefore the terror of the Lord, while all the other translations I looked at says, knowing the fear of the Lord. This terror, this fear, is directly related to verse 10, which says, we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. The companion verse that springs to mind for me is Romans 11:22. Therefore consider the goodness and the severity of God. On those who fell, severity, but towards you goodness, if you continue in his goodness, otherwise you will be cut off. This terror, this fear is relative to the absoluteness of the judgment that all will experience at the judgment seat. Eternally separated from God and everything that is good, or eternally separated from evil, from sin, from sickness, from sorrow, and everything that's bad. This is so absolute that my mind cannot grasp the reality of it. I cannot grasp the horror of completely bad or the ecstasy of completely good. The goal is always to live to please the Lord. We must all appear before the judgment seat where we will receive what we have done in this life. Our future life rests entirely in the hands of God, who judges what we've done in this life. What we do has moral significance and eternal consequences. The universal judgment of believers preserves the moral seriousness of God. This reminds all believers that the righteousness of faith can only be expressed in love, obedience, and by pleasing the Lord. The certainty of God's judgment should call forth our obedience. Now, there's a saying, whatever it is that one fears the most is what one will serve the most. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, it's the beginning of wisdom, and it is the basis of faithful service to the Lord. A supreme awe of God motivates to right action and prevents self-reliance. This fear of the Lord is a consciousness, a reverential awe of God that directs the way one lives. The fear of the Lord, the dread of God's judgment, is balanced with the experience of the love of God. God's love and forgiveness do not deaden the conscience to the absolute holiness and righteousness of God. The fear of the Lord is essential to living a life that pleases God. I got to say that again. The fear of the Lord is essential to living a life that pleases God. The fear of the Lord motivates us to persuade others about the seriousness of God and the abundance of God's mercy. Persuading others can only be done effectively by God and with God's standards. One consumed with the fear of the Lord generates true persuasion. The love of Christ controls us. The fear of the Lord motivates us. Jesus died so that we would no longer live for ourselves, but for him. God reconciled us to himself through Jesus and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. God has committed to us the word of reconciliation. Him who knew no sin became sin on our behalf so that we might become the righteousness of God in Jesus. I want to challenge you today to ask God for an increased revelation of his goodness and his severity. Ask God for an increase of the fear of the Lord in your life so that you and I truly can no longer live for ourselves but live to please him, and so that we can truly persuade people to no longer live for themselves but to live for him. The word for today is fear. God bless. Check in tomorrow.